Well, good evening. Welcome to Grover Hill Zion United Methodist Church's Thursday evening devotions from the kitchen table, where we've been talking now for quite some time about the great hymns of the church, or some of those. We take a different hymn each week and talk about the background and why the author wrote that song, and perhaps it's meaningful to us as well. Perhaps you can hear it in the background playing what we're discussing this evening. This evening we're talking about a great hymn that was written probably about 50 years ago now, but it's titled, "Have You Seen Jesus My Lord?" It's kind of amazing because the title of the hymn has a question mark, ends in a question mark. Have you seen Jesus my Lord? And speaking of that, do you have a special place where you can go and just be alone in a quiet place, be alone and think of being in God's presence, or being present with your family and bonding in those times? Just some great memories where you can feel God's love and the love of others. That's why God gave us all of these different scenes and the work of His hands and so forth. Well, I go for a walk in the early morning hours many times throughout the week, almost every day. This morning, for instance, I was up about 3 o'clock, and I went out, I guess it was about 4:30 or so, for a 45-minute walk or so. My time varies when I go out. It depends on what I feel like doing. But this morning, beautiful morning this morning. Stepped outside and looked up into the sky, and you saw a clear sky in some places. Beautiful, bright stars up there. Just amazing. That amazes me. And the moon, it was a bright, white, full moon. Beautiful scene. And it had some clouds, of course, surrounded it. I think it rained later on in the morning. And then when I go for a walk, I invite the Lord to go for a walk with me. And as I leave my yard, I look out and I see all the trees and the bushes that are out there. And I think, wow, that's pretty neat. And then along the journey, you can see some wildlife occasionally. Just amazing, and you can see the work of God's hands throughout creation. It's just beautiful this morning. And creation, creation speaks to us differently. Brad, for instance, posts a number of videos about sunsets in various places. And of course, those are great places to find God too, or to be alone with God. And if you can hear the song, of course, that's some of the words of the song as well. The song, it just starts out and it's titled, "Have You Seen Jesus My Lord?" And the refrain, and let me share the refrain, and I'll share the words with you later. Have you seen Jesus my Lord? He's here in plain view. Take a look and open your eyes, and He'll show it to you. So we have all of creation. And speaking of creation, the Apostle Paul addressed in the first chapter of Romans, beginning with verse 18, addressed about what's going to happen to those folks that don't know God. How can you punish them if they don't know? And Paul writes this, "The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godless and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse." Another version says people are without excuse. You know, they've had all of creation to look at. Just like we can know something about the author of this song just by the words he wrote. We can know something of an artist by what he's painted or sculpted. We can understand a little bit about that. And so we can know about God just through the works of his hands, the works that he's created. Well, this song, Have You Seen Jesus, My Lord, was written by a man by the name of John Fisher. He was 23 years old, had been out of college for about a year, and so he was probably still feeling the effects of his experience on the American West Coast as a young adult. He was studying for the ministry, and so that was probably still fresh in his mind, along with the influence of his mentor. These things probably impacted his life for many years, and what made John Fisher write a song with a question mark? Have you seen Jesus, my Lord? Sounds strange, doesn't it? The way he asked the question in the song, initially, in the beginning, it seems rhetorical. Of course, when the question's asked, you want to answer the question, don't you? Have you seen Jesus, my Lord? But then notice how he shifts away about halfway through the song. And see if he's not asking you as well to look at yourself. To look at yourself. And by the way, this is a great hymn just to look at a video on YouTube or some other place where you can of this song. And maybe it'll speak to you. Many years ago, when I was involved with something called the Walk to Emmaus, this was one of our favorite hymns that we sang quite a bit. Have you seen Jesus, my Lord? Anyway, Fisher went to college at Wheaton, Illinois, before he went out west to the West Coast for a mentorship in Christian ministry at the Peninsula Bible Church at Palo Alto, California in the late 1960s. Now, you can imagine what the times were like. If you ever heard of the 1960s, many of you perhaps have lived through the 60s. Not everyone, of course, but during the 60s, Vietnam was happening. Of course, the peace movement was forming up, as well as there were Jesus freaks out there too, a group called Jesus Freaks. All familiar ground for Fisher, who was just fresh out of college during that time. There was the Central California coast that Fisher was living by. The Pacific Ocean was his front view. Can you imagine that being on the ocean? Can you imagine the picturesque sunsets that he saw? And of course, the ocean front view that he'd be able to look out and see the waters and the waves coming in. And other things as well, the clear skies in California. No doubt they contributed to Fisher's thoughts in 1970 as he wrote these words to this song. And he composed it with a question mark. You see all of these things, and as you see all these things, have you seen Jesus, my Lord? Now, he hasn't recorded a particular instant or multiple circumstances that compelled him to write his song. He doesn't tell us why he wrote it. But in his words, he gives us clues. He was struck by the creation, the ocean experience, the magnificent California sky at dusk. All of these he observed. And he says, can anyone deny the reality of deity when taking in such marvels as these? And Fisher then asks, the Jesus movement simple message, or the Jesus movement simple message also comes out in Fisher's music. You know, the Get Jesus proposition that was going on at that time, it's done with a folk rock beat. It just simply can't be ignored. As you hear this, you can hear that kind of a rock beat behind it. Well, it's a love message straight out of the Make War Not Peace movement or times. It has a divine streak in it as well. You can tell that God is present in these words. So what's common to you and me? John Fisher saw 4 things, all of them free. There's no cover charge for the ocean and for the sunset, not for the others I have around me, and not for what God has done for me. Fisher's simple questions ask my acknowledgement of the obvious. Nothing else is asked of me. It's an evangelism that's not pushy. You know, if you want to see Jesus, open your eyes and take a look around. Now, he doesn't even really tell me to worship him, just to see him and admit that he's there. Then let my conscience take me in a logical direction. In a logical direction. Nothing hard about that at all, is there? Well, let me just read the words to it if you can't make out the words that are playing here. Let me just share with you the words to the song. It begins, have you seen Jesus my Lord? He's here in plain view. Take a look and open your eyes. He'll show it to you. Have you ever seen the sunset with the sky mellowing red and the clouds suspended like feathers? Then I say, you've seen Jesus my Lord. Have you ever stood at the ocean with a white foam at your feet, felt the endless thundering motion? Then I say, you've seen Jesus my Lord. Have you ever looked at the cross with a man hanging in pain and the look of love in his eyes? Then I say, you've seen Jesus my Lord. Have you ever stood in the family with the Lord there in your midst, seen the face of Christ on each other? Then I say, you've seen Jesus my Lord. This week, I hope you just take a look and see Jesus. Have a great and blessed week.